It is an age-old question in an age when nothing makes sense anymore. Can you use pizza to predict the start of a war? The idea may sound completely ridiculous at first, but there is a coherent logic behind the claim. And while the world's focus as I write these words is over in Iran, the theory is more broadly applicable elsewhere. The United States mobilizes an amazing amount of metal nearby a target country. Some suspect that this is an elaborate bluff that will ultimately go nowhere, and they may eventually be proven right. But if you think that it is the negotiations with the opponent that will go nowhere, the next logical question is when exactly the United States will launch its operation. Well, the Pentagon pizza theory, yes, real words that I just said, tells us that all we need to do is track the number of orders of pizza made at parlors near the Pentagon or elsewhere in Washington. Today, though, we need to discuss the merit behind the pizza party proposition, because if you sort out its strategic implications, a clear answer begins to emerge. But let's start with the basic pizza argument. If you think that what I said already sounds completely nuts, it is not. After all, nuts do not make good pizza toppings. The core idea is that, when major military motions are afoot, staffers in the Pentagon put in a bunch of overtime, often at bizarre hours of the night. With the stakes as high as they are, the Pentagon's leadership does not want to pull people away from their desks. However, people get hungry, they cannot exit the building to eat, and no one wants an elaborate meal while they are also trying to coordinate military action. So there is a simple solution. Order a crazy amount of pizza and feed everyone one slice at a time. Indeed, the origin of the Pentagon pizza theory dates back to 1991 and the start of the Persian Gulf War. An owner of many of the Domino's pizza franchises in Washington noted that late-night deliveries to the Pentagon surged right before the United States launched Operation Desert Storm. Further, he retrospectively noted that pizza orders to the CIA hit a record right before Iraq invaded Kuwait the August beforehand. Rather than apologize for forcing its employees to eat absolutely bottom-tier pizza, a CIA spokesperson simply told the LA Times that the orders, quote, certainly do not mean that they're not keeping busy, end quote, and that he wanted to, quote, make clear that they're working very hard there, end quote. Various wild assertions have followed from this without much in the way of real citations, including that the Soviet Union would monitor pizza orders during the Cold War as a vital part of its intelligence efforts. The theory became more popular during the bin Laden raid in 2011, when the White House effectively threw a pizza party to accompany the mission. Humorously, The Guardian suggested the guy in the back of this famous photo from the White House was the delivery boy. In fact, it is Anthony Blinken, frontman of the rock band Abe Lincoln, and former Secretary of State under Joe Biden. The pizza still reigns supreme today. Is it the year 2025 and Israel is about to start bombing Iran? Better order some pizza. Is the year still 2025 and the United States wants to join the bombing runs to hit some Iranian nuclear facilities? Better order some pizza. Has the calendar shifted to 2026 and now you are conducting a special Maduro operation? Better order some pizza. And thus the theory has found a special place in Washington lore. You've got to watch the pizzas if you want to understand what is happening in international security. There is even a Pentagon Pizza Report account on the website formerly known as Twitter that will give you live updates on how busy the local establishments are. Or turn it up to 11 and visit peasant.watch. That's PIZZINT.watch. It is the perfect fever dream. Your cursor is a slice. And watch out if we ever reach Dokkan 1. And let's not forget the corollary to the theory, that gay bars empty out on the eve of an attack. Why specifically gay bars? I have no earthly idea. Well, I hope we have all had our fun with that, because I am now about to rain on the parade. Here is the reality of the situation. Pizza is, at best, a poor indicator of what may be happening in international affairs. It is the type of story that makes for cute headlines and clicks. Critical thought need not be applied. After all, instead of writing an article with the headline, "Area restaurant owner makes self-serving claim that sales are brisk," you could usher in the next hot thing in open source intelligence studies. And this box is HOTTOGO. Then, instead of snapping, clapping, and body rolling, you could turn a pizza tracking website that does not take itself too seriously into a major hub of real-time information leaks. Meanwhile, much of the background of the theory has fallen into urban legend status, again without any clear citations for its claims, especially the anecdote about the Soviet Union using pizza as a part of its intelligence operations. But the minute that you start doing some critical thinking, once more, something conveniently absent from all of those articles, the whole thing falls apart. For example, what exactly were Soviet spies doing in the 1970s? Was it someone's job to call dozens of pizza establishments on a nightly basis just to ask how busy they are and then report back to Moscow with their findings? And that never caused suspicion among anyone in Washington? May I alternatively suggest simply counting how many cars are parked outside of the Pentagon? Or perhaps monitoring the subway station right outside of it as well? Because if what you really care about is people working overtime there, you could just count the people there rather than the pizzas. Still, there are a couple of teachable lessons here that speak to good statistical and strategic thinking outside of the narrow pizza parlor application. Issue 1 is a statistical fallacy known as selecting on the dependent variable. This is when you take the outcome of interest, in this case, the start of a war, and then look at the factors common to them. In contrast, a good statistician would look at the instances of pizzas getting ordered, and then see how often that correlates with wars starting. Let me illustrate the absurdities that arise if you do this the wrong way. Here is a true story. My local hospital just conducted a study and found that every single patient in its cancer ward had consumed large quantities of a chemical known as, get this, dihydrogen oxide over their lives. Having now observed the connection, the local government plans to meet next week to decide whether to ban it from consumer products. Sounds like a compelling argument, right? Well, until you look closer at that chemical name. Dihydrogen oxide. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. I guess we could alternatively just call that water. And just so this is clear, we are not about to ban water here. The only true part of that story is ultimately how cancer victims tend to be heavy drinkers. Of water, that is. It turns out that you cannot just look at cancer deaths and make a claim that water kills people. Instead, you would need to look at everyone's water consumption. And if you did, I bet that you would soon find out that the people consuming water tend to do better than the people who do not. Pizza-wise, you would need to construct a measure of pizza orders across many years, and then check whether the days of large orders happen more often on the eve of war than on ordinary days. And once you start doing this properly, you notice that it is either a poor predictor or an awful predictor. Let's take a closer look at that Pentagon pizza report account from earlier. It turns out that foot traffic surges at local pizza establishments on a fairly regular basis. That is just the nature of randomness. You do not get a uniform distribution. Sometimes you get valleys. Sometimes you get peaks. Sometimes one restaurant will be empty, but another one will be surging. However, even when you observe a random surge, wars rarely follow. Putting all of this together, it is easy to take the start of a war and retrospectively find surges of pizza orders. What is nearly impossible to do is take a surge of pizza orders and confidently say that a war will start tonight. And if you did try, then the Pentagon pizza report would have told you that a war against Iran has started a dozen separate times already. Moving along, the second issue is a strategic problem. Let me introduce you to Goodhart's Law, named for British economist Charles Goodhart. In its traditional form, it says that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Well, allow me to give you the strategic corollary to that. In an adversarial environment, when one party uses a manipulable measure to make decisions, the other party will deliberately manipulate that measure. Let's imagine for a moment that you could reliably predict the outbreak of war by tracking pizza orders. And you know what? It is fully possible that, once upon a time, it may have been a good measure. Well, if you kept the relationship a secret, then you may very well be able to continue predicting wars in that manner. But the moment that this becomes public knowledge, say because it has its own Wikipedia page, or because reporters love writing cutesy articles about it, it is no longer a reliable predictor. The US military likes this little thing known as operational security. The Pentagon does not want adversaries to anticipate the exact start time of a conflict. So if policymakers can manipulate pizza orders, then they will start to manipulate the pizza orders. Indeed, the Pentagon is explicitly aware of the pizza tracking conspiracy and has increased resources to produce food in-house precisely to reduce the possibility of intelligence strips. The Pentagon is the world's second largest office building, only having been surpassed in the last few years. Unsurprisingly, there is a food court inside of it, featuring a McDonald's, Taco Bell, Panda Express, and about a dozen more places. Some of these stay open 24/7 in part so that this is not an issue. Sadly, though, there are not very many photos of the food court. For reasons that I cannot explain, the Pentagon really does not like people taking photos inside there. You will just have to take my word for it. But you can see a Starbucks in the background of this 2013 photo of Senator Tim Kaine. Actually, the only photo that I could find of pizza at the Pentagon was this demonstration of shelf-stable pizza. Yum? Anyway, for the Bin Laden raid, the Obama White House deliberately spread out its orders among many pizzerias so as not to alert anyone of what was happening. They also picked up a bulk food order from Costco because apparently no one suspects that Costco orders could have nefarious motives. At least not yet, anyway. Register Costco Crisis Checker on socials while you still can. Now, there is a possibility that the pizza orders could reflect actual hidden information about the outbreak of war. Media companies will often know the start time of military operations because of private leaks from those involved. They do not report publicly on that information ahead of time, though, so as to not endanger service personnel. However, if you know that the war will start at 2 a.m., then you might want to have all of your reporters in-house overnight. You will also need to feed them, and that leads to pizza orders. Okay, but let's go with that for a second. Insofar as that could be a good metric for foreign intelligence organizations to track, it is vulnerable to what we might call a pizza parlay. Note that if it is a good metric, then the target government would respond by putting its troops on alert to prepare for an attack. However, it is good for the Pentagon for opposing troops to go on alert without an actual war starting. It, for example, might tire them out before the next night when the war will actually begin. Well, it turns out that buying an overwhelming amount of pizza, even if you immediately plan to throw it in the trash, does not cost much by defense budget standards. Actually, if all you think that it will do is save one US soldier, you are turning a huge profit here. The government values each American life at $10 million, and you do not need to buy $10 million in pizza to trigger the trackers. As a result, no foreign government ought to trust pizza orders as an indicator, because the moment that they do is the moment that they can be taken advantage of. And if you think that I am joking about this, I am not. Last year, Pete Hegseth said, "I've thought of just ordering lots of pizza on random nights. Some Friday night when you see a bunch of Domino's orders, it might just be me on an app, throwing the whole system off so we can keep everyone off balance. Thus, if you want to look at pizza orders as a fun indicator about what might happen in Iran or elsewhere, be my guest. Just do not take it seriously. Maybe instead spend your time writing your preferred pizza order in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.